On November 16, 1957, the tiny farming town of Plainfield, Wisconsin, became the stage for one of the most grotesque discoveries in American history. Sheriff deputies entered the home of a quiet, odd handyman named Edward Theodore Gein. What they found inside would sear itself into the annals of true crime forever. The smell hit them first hour, metallically human. In the kitchen, a body hung upside down from the rafters, headless, gutted like a deer. It was Bernice Worden, the local hardware store owner, who had disappeared earlier that day. But that was only the beginning. As officers searched deeper, they uncovered horrors that defied comprehension. Bowls made from human skulls, chairs upholstered with human skin, masks crafted from the faces of dead women, a belt sewn from nipples, and a collection of preserved female genitalia in a shoebox. The house was less a home than a shrine to death, stitched together from the remains of at least 15 women. The man responsible was Ed Gein, a reclusive, unassuming bachelor who lived alone in a decaying farmhouse. To his neighbors, he was strange but harmless, an eccentric oddball who did odd jobs and kept mostly to himself. They could not have imagined that behind his blank stare, an awkward smile hid one of the darkest obsessions the world had ever seen. Gein was not a serial killer in the conventional sense. He only confessed to killing 2 women, but his true legacy was in his ghoulish grave robbing, his desecration of corpses, and his desire to become something beyond human. His crimes would inspire some of the most terrifying characters in popular culture. Norman Bates in Psycho, Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs. To understand how such a man came to be, we must go back to the beginning. Ed Gein was born on August 27, 1906, in La Crosse, Wisconsin, the second son of George and Augusta Gein. His father was an alcoholic, his mother a domineering religious zealot. Augusta instilled in her sons a hatred of women, except herself. She preached that the world was evil, that women were sinful, and that sex was corrupt. Her grip on Ed was absolute. She isolated him from the outside world, forbidding him from making friends or dating. The family moved to a 155-acre farm outside Plainfield, where Ed's life became one of crushing loneliness. He was awkward, bullied at school, and retreated into fantasies. His only true companion was his mother. When Ed's father died in 1940, and later his brother Henry in a suspicious fire in 1944, Ed was left alone with Augusta. Her death in 1945 devastated him. Without her control, Ed was adrift, a man-child incapable of normal relationships. He sealed off the rooms she had lived in, leaving them pristine while the rest of the farmhouse decayed into filth. It was after Augusta's death that Ed's obsessions began to metastasize. Ed Gein became fascinated with death and the female body. He read pulp magazines, anatomy books, and particularly stories of Nazi experiments and cannibals. He began visiting local cemeteries at night, exhuming freshly buried women who resembled his mother. He admitted later that he would fall into trances, dig up bodies, and take them home to experiment. He skinned corpses, crafted masks, and even made a woman's suit out of stitched flesh, which he wore in a grotesque attempt to become his mother. To him, it was not simply murder or mutilation, was transformation. Though grave robbing consumed most of his activities, Gein did kill. In 1954, he shot tavern owner Mary Hogan, whose remains were later found in his house. In 1957, he targeted Bernice Worden, luring her with the promise of purchasing antifreeze. When she disappeared, her cash register missing, suspicion quickly fell on Ed, who had been seen at her store. That night, police entered his farmhouse and uncovered the Chamber of Horrors. The inventory of items recovered shocked even seasoned investigators. 10 human skulls used as bowls, human skin fashioned into lampshades, a chair covered in human hide, leggings sewn from leg skin, lips mounted on a drawstring for a window shade, and a collection of vulvas preserved in a box. Most disturbing of all was a mask made from the face of Bernice Worden hanging on the wall. Ed was arrested and interrogated. He confessed calmly, describing his nocturnal trips to graveyards, his exhumations, and his experiments in crafting artifacts. He claimed he only killed 2 women, though suspicion lingers that there may have been more. Psychiatrists diagnosed him with schizophrenia and grave robbing compulsion. At trial in 1957, Gein was declared legally insane and committed to Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. He would spend the rest of his life in institutions, later transferred to Mendota Mental Health Institute, where he remained until his death in 1984. By all accounts, he was a quiet, compliant patient who spent his days doing menial tasks, drawing and reading. But his crimes continued to reverberate. The legacy of Ed Gein was not in body count, but in imagination. His grotesque creations and his warped psychology seeped into horror cinema. Robert Bloch's Psycho took inspiration from his relationship with his mother, spawning Alfred Hitchcock's chilling Norman Bates. Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre drew from Gein's macabre furniture and masks. Thomas Harris's The Silence of the Lambs borrowed his idea of sewing a suit from women's skin. Ed Gein became less a man and more an archetype, the rural ghoul, the cannibal handyman, the face of horror in America. Yet behind the horror lies tragedy. Gein was a man twisted by an abusive mother, isolation, and untreated mental illness. Plainfield, once a quiet farming community, became synonymous with evil. Tourists still seek the site of his farmhouse, which was burned down in 1958. The townspeople destroyed it to erase the stain of his memory. But erasure was impossible. Ed Gein had already entered folklore. What makes Gein so disturbing is not simply what he did, but what he represented. The terror that beneath the ordinary face of a neighbor could lurk unimaginable depravity. He did not live in a city. He did not target strangers in alleys. He lived down the road, waved to neighbors, and bought groceries like everyone else. His evil was hidden in plain sight. As investigators packed evidence from his farmhouse, one deputy whispered, "I hope we never see anything like this again." They haven't had, at least, not quite like this. Yet, Ed Gein endures in every mask-wearing slasher, every fictional cannibal, every whispered urban legend. Even today, one question remains. Was Ed Gein a product of madness, or was he proof that sometimes monsters are born in the most ordinary of places? Don't forget to like and subscribe to Crimson Narratives, where the darkest crimes in history are unearthed, told in chilling detail, and remembered so that they may never happen again.